Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the In Our Bodies podcast. This is your host, Henry. First episode of 2022. Sending everyone who is listening some warmth and a friendly hello. This year, I wanted to keep honoring the pace in which I'm doing this and keep being excited to develop this podcast in a way that is paying attention to and always hyping POCs in the disability space. Thank you if you've taken the time to listen. Thank you if you have been one of our fabulous guests so far. I hope this year we continue sharing some catharsis in being honest about how we're feeling in our minds, our bodies. I hope we continue celebrating each other for the pace that we need to go at. I'm really excited for you to hear this episode with Iman. She is a bright and deeply caring person who you can really tell in our conversation is passionate about showing up for her community. I hope you enjoy. Hello, welcome back to In Our Bodies podcast. Today we have Iman. Iman is a Bangladeshi American woman in her 20s. She enjoys many forms of creative expression, including dance, makeup, fashion, and poetry. Art therapy helps her cope with being chronically ill and disabled. To her, being inclusive of a diverse community is necessity. Hello, Iman. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm excited to chat. And as we spoke before off camera or off audio, we had to reschedule a couple times, eh?
Yes.
Yeah, and kind of like riding on that. And we just had to do it because, plans change, bodies change, and if you can't do that day, you just can't do that day. I wanted to talk to you about canceling plans. I think that's a great place to start, yeah?
Yeah, I definitely have had a lot of experience with it.
Yeah, specifically, I think one thing I want to know is so I think when I was younger, I would feel really anxious about canceling plans because I was always scared because sometimes I think I would have to do it often for my physical health or probably because I was depressed. I was always scared people thought I was lying because I had to do it so much, or I thought that I wasn't sick enough and I actually almost made myself feel like I was lying. Yeah, what is canceling plans like for you? Or rescheduling?
Yeah, I think for me, before I kind of knew I was struggling with my health,
Hmm.
I definitely had a harder time navigating plans because there were some days where I was just too fatigued. Maybe my battery was drained. Like I
Hmm.
was drained socially and I just couldn't. And I would feel really bad, so I would just go anyway, and then it would be awful.
Oh.
So over time, I tried to, say, "Oh, hey, I'm not feeling it today. Like, can we reschedule?" And
Yeah.
honestly, if people couldn't accept that, I kind of had to distance myself from them because that was really important for me to realize.
Yeah.
But after I was diagnosed and started having really severe fatigue and
Hmm.
other symptoms that can make it so that I can't make a lot of plans,
Yeah.
I have learned that, you know, doing things spontaneously is really difficult,
Yeah.
but sometimes
Fair.
it's actually more helpful because if I'm having a good day, like, just reach out and
Yeah.
see, and if it
Sure,
works,
sure,
it
sure.
works.
Yeah.
But then there's also, like, making plans and knowing, "Hey, I'll try to make it, but if I can't, we'll have to reschedule," and that's just kind of
Hmm.
always gonna happen, and
Yeah.
I think that's true of anyone, um, but I'm learning a lot about me that I have had to cancel a lot of plans. Like, I've even had to cancel doctor appointments in the past few weeks. I haven't been able to
Okay.
go to any of them
Right.
because it's like you're too tired, too sick to even see the doctor,
Right.
and I felt guilty about that as well,
Hmm.
but I think it's helping me learn that, like, when your body needs rest, we have to cancel plans because,
Yeah.
like, our plan is to rest and to take time for ourselves
Yeah.
to recover. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of like we don't get to plan that. That can't be planned. Like we can do
No.
our best and kind of know or have an idea of what our limits are, or hopefully as we kind of
both know our bodies better and our minds better. But there's no that's the whole fun of it. There's no
Yeah, it's not
yeah,
predictable, it's not
no,
consistent, and that's, like, the most frustrating part,
yeah,
but we have to accept it because if we push past that, it I think it hurts us mentally and physically as well.
totally. So when you first started discovering that like you had to cancel plans more or like just had to be more flexible or spontaneous, did you get pushback from like people or do you still get pushback about do people make you feel bad about it?
I think a lot of it is my anxiety and just
Okay.
assuming people are mad, but
Okay.
also in the past I have had people not understand and just stop inviting me or, tell me
Ugh,
like I'm
that's rough.
like, "Oh, you're too sick to go, so I didn't even bother to tell you." I was like, "Okay, well that's for me to decide, not you."
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think from those experiences, I assume that even if my current situations are not, like I have the memories and
Mm-hmm.
like echoes in my head that that could be possibly what someone's thinking. So I
Totally.
actually try to tell myself like, "Hey, if they're not saying it, let's not go there, you're
Yeah,
doing what you can."
totally.
And a lot of the time I think I'm learning to thank people rather than apologize because
Yeah,
I'm appreciative of the patience versus like apologizing for what I need to do, which I don't have to
totally.
do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that that is part of why I do feel like there's pushback, but there's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily always, but I still do get some even now.
Yeah. I feel that. It's really never easy. But on that kind of like social aspect, I wanted to talk about the Instagram blackout, right?
Yeah,
For that 6 hours, and there was, I don't know, I don't remember how long it was, but there was a little bit of time, probably like over a month ago now, where Instagram, Facebook, everything was just like not working. And I know a lot
yeah.
of people were like, oh, thank God, like, fuck Instagram, whatever, whatever. And yes, partly that, like, I felt a sense of calm, but also, like, at that moment, it was like, I think that day, it was like, actually the day that I wanted to post my first podcast episode. And and suddenly I didn't have a community and I didn't have a place to do it. And it just really made me think like fuck, like I know that it's social media is not perfect, Instagram's not perfect, but I also like have learned a lot on this platform. Like what was your experience? Like what went through your mind like when that happened?
I had, like, a lot of panic because I think for a long time, I didn't even really rely on Instagram or social media for
Mhm.
connection. I would just text or call or see people in person.
Yeah.
Now that I'm more, like, I'm housebound a lot of the time, and
Yeah.
so I just it's really important. It's, like, a really important source for me to talk to people, connect, and, find a community. So I
Mhm.
actually had a lot of panic that day. People were telling me, it's not going to come back and that's a good thing. And I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know if that's the most like, I don't know if I experienced that myself. Like, I
Yeah.
personally did not feel a calmness because that was where I kind of got help and support
Totally.
through the to get through the day, and also with the
Mm.
time differences wherever people were, it definitely felt a lot longer because some people weren't awake even when it was back, so I just was like, "Oh, like,
Oh.
all day, I can't
It was at the
talk to
beginning, it
anyone."
was the beginning of the day for you, right?
I think so, but then, like, it was still down for a lot of people, like, later. Like, for me, it
Mhm.
actually came back, like, midday or at night, kind of.
Okay.
Um, but, like, at that time, some people were not awake and things, so I was like, "Oh, this is kinda strange," and, I think it did make me really anxious
Yeah.
to not have a space and, like, support because it's something I rely on a lot, and I don't want to, but it's just
Yeah.
become something that really helps me.
Yeah, there aren't that many options, right? Like I was like having dinner and I was chatting with some friends about this. Like a lot of us who are chronically ill and disabled uh are the only one or can be the only one amongst their friends or family, like I think in my life I've only personally known maybe now you're the third or fourth person. I'm like 28 and I've never personally or had like deep personal relationships really with anyone that has like similar illnesses as I do, and like that's fucking hard. Like I know that like your loved ones can hopefully try to understand and whatever, but like it's really been through like the online community that I've learned a lot,
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I definitely felt alone when I was diagnosed and going through the
right?
process and didn't know what was happening to me. And to now connect with people who had similar experiences and know what it's like is definitely really um, relieving because I
Yeah.
just felt like, it's so draining to explain it all the time and just be like, "Oh, it's fine. People don't get it, but they're there for me." And I
Yeah.
think I do actually know a few people in my life who do have chronic illnesses and
Okay.
different health issues.
Cool.
Um, and also throughout like the years, some people have started opening up to me and
Hmm.
or have found out. And so I think it's made me feel less alone in that way.
Yeah. I feel
But
like a
they're
lot of
still
people
like
are
super far.
closeted. Right? Some people are
Yeah.
closeted.
No, because I mean, there's so much stigma. I mean,
Totally.
I like basically from me talking about it, some people are like, "Oh, thank you." Like, I relate to that too, and I just
Hmm.
didn't realize because no one was talking about
Right.
it.
Exactly.
And I think that that has made a big difference, but like, it's still really difficult because
Hmm.
when you're both sick, then you still can't connect because you both are not feeling well, and you
Right.
can't. So there's like positives and negatives with that as well.
For sure. I wanted to bring up so you and other founder Ree, who is called Ree is Sick on Instagram, all of this will be tagged in the show notes, run an account called Amplify BIPOC Disabled Voices. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yes, so Ree actually was talking to me about her idea earlier this year or mid-year,
What is
and she
time?
was right, and she was really passionate about you know amplifying BIPOC disabled voices in the community because a lot of the community is just so whitewashed. You
Yeah,
rarely see or hear
totally.
about cultural, race, different things in the community that
Mm-hmm.
makes a difference in our experiences with healthcare and everything. I mean, we
Totally.
still struggle, but there's just like other parts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to talk about that. So she wanted to make a space for people to share their stories either anonymously or, they can also share and people can find them. And also for her to share some things as well. And then later on, she asked me to be a part of it because she knew I was kind of passionate about that myself.
So are you guys
And
online friends or real friends? Like or like
we're online
nice,
friends.
nice, nice.
Yeah, so we met this year and it's been
Nice.
amazing. And recently we added a few people to the team.
Nice. Yeah, I saw that. I
Um
saw that on the Instagram
so
page.
it's been really nice to have some extra people and
Cool.
expand so that we have more experiences because we want it to be more diverse and more
Of course.
inclusive.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's where we're at with that.
I'm really glad to like see a lot of like narratives around South Asian disability discourse like being talked about because obviously I'm like East Asian and just in my life have known more East Asians and like it's cool to kind of connect the dots and kind of start having those conversations in my community. But like I don't know a lot of South Asians and it's really cool to just like see these like overlapping conversations happening even though like some of our culture is different. Like it's definitely lots of like really similar struggles happening for sure.
Yes, and actually, I was gonna say that too because part of what kind of led me to meeting Ree
Hmm.
and many other people is Chronically Brown.
Cool.
So that account and organization definitely made me feel less alone and like I didn't realize there were so many other South Asians because I was seeing, I didn't really see a diverse group of people talking about chronic illness to begin with.
Yeah, I
But I did
know.
not expect South Asian specifically to be
Exactly.
a huge thing.
Yeah.
And then recently I saw that there's like an Asian disability count as well.
Cool.
And there's some like Black disability, different like groups. And
Mhm,
so
mhm,
it's been
mhm.
really nice to see that and like also how, they're inclusive of each other.
Yeah.
And I like to connect with people from all of them just to see, because I feel
Yeah,
like if
to
you
see
only
what's
have
going
your
on.
experience,
Yeah.
it's just like, you don't know, and
Mhm.
then you can make connections and things too because like
Yeah.
you said, South Asian and East Asian, like, we're neighbors.
Totally. There's so much shared stuff that's happening and like especially just like I think family dynamic stuff is like very similar. And I kind of wanted to
Yeah.
lead into as we introduced you, you're Bangladeshi American, and like I wanted to maybe explore a little bit about your kind of like I didn't so like when I moved to Europe or somewhere, I think to some people saying the brown community is offensive. So I don't know, but like, is it okay that we like talk about it as like your experience in the brown community? Is it okay to say it that way?
For me, that's fine. I feel
Okay.
like brown is inclusive of multiple things,
Okay.
like, and I do feel like I fit that. I mean,
Okay.
so I'm not offended by
Okay.
it.
Because some people are like, it wasn't South Asian people, but it was just like, I think just other people. They're like, you can't say that. I was like, oh, okay. Like, it was just like, especially in, I think we're also very culturally similar ish because you grew up in like essentially West Coast America, and I'm also from like very, very West Coast in Canada. And like, I
Mhm.
did have like South Asian friends in high school, and like they always were like the brown community. So,
And I think that's part of because people didn't really talk about South Asian for a while. They said brown because
yeah,
they thought of other brown people and they just kind of joined like added us to
a
that
lot of
group,
people
They're like, "Oh, they're
didn't
also brown."
they
And so like
didn't
everyone was
yeah
brown.
they also
Yeah.
didn't we talked about this like in our pre-interview. They didn't consider there's still so much like colorism and shit about like who is considered Asian, right? Like
Yes,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think like, how people are saying black and brown now, like,
Mhm, mhm.
like they're together. Like some people are not liking that, some people are.
Yeah,
I think it unifies us, but I don't have an issue with it personally.
yeah,
So, I'm
totally.
completely okay because that community is something I feel like I am a part of.
Mhm. And to go back to the question, yeah, just like
Yeah.
disability in the brown community, like how has it been kind of coming into understanding yourself and like disability community culture and discourse amongst your family? Because this is just an assumption that I'm making among like from my own family, but there is no language for it really. Like we're just starting to talk about it, like or the language is very like ableist, or like the mentality can be very ableist. So like what has been kind of your experience?
I've definitely recognized, yeah, there is a lot of ableism, even like in the culture,
Yeah,
religion,
for sure.
everything. And I mean, it's been like almost 6 years since I got diagnosed with some of these things, so
Okay.
it's been a work in progress, but my family is becoming more supportive and learning with me.
Okay.
And I think in the beginning it was more so like, oh, it's going to be fine, like you're going to get better, and then at some point it was like, okay, well, if you're not going to get better, like what do we do from there? Is that like completely bad, or is like, we had to figure out what that meant, and basically telling me that disabled isn't necessarily a bad thing and going
Yeah.
through that kind of conversation.
Yeah. So is your family at the point where they understand that chronic illness means that like you will not slash might not get better? Because like I think one of the huge things for so long in my life was like we kept trying to find a cure, and I think my parents still kind of talk about it in the context of like being cured of it. And I like it took me a long time to kind of like step away from that, and just like and a lot of grief, honestly, to be like,
Yes.
okay, it's honestly never gonna get better. Like, like, so does your family accept that, or are they still trying to like find a cure for like
I think my
whatever is
family
going
is
on?
mostly accepting of it because they can see
Okay.
that I can still have a life and I can still, do things where with chronic illness,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
coping wise, they're like, as long as you can like cope, that's like good enough,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it took a long time, and whenever something pops up, they do kind of get hopeful, and it's hard for me because I'm like, okay, well, I do
Yeah,
sometimes
it's
want
so
to hope,
hard.
but it's
Yeah.
like it could be very disappointing, so I don't want to let myself go there,
Yeah.
and
Sometimes I'm
it's
just
a
like
difficult thing.
respectfully, no, thank you. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I think with my family that I live with, like, I definitely think they understand a lot more. With maybe other family, they don't see me as much, they might
Yeah.
not understand as much, I think it's harder,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, and the expectations are different,
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's taken time, and with the culture, like, it's gonna take time because, like you said, there isn't really a way to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
If it is, like, kind of, recognized or acknowledged, then people might say it, but they might say it in a way that's like, oh, they won't mention the fact that they're disabled. They just, like, have this, and
Yeah.
this is how their life is. And it's
Sure,
like,
sure,
it's
sure,
almost like
sure.
they have to avoid that term at all
Yeah,
costs. Like,
because
I didn't
it's
even
like
recognize
you're
the
giving
fact
up
that I
or you're
had that.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Right. Like,
Totally.
no one ever really labels themselves, or, I guess refers to people in my family as that way. So
Yeah.
I didn't even realize, like, oh, we do have this in our family. And I like, oh,
Mhm,
there are
mhm,
friends that have these
mhm,
conditions.
mhm.
Yeah.
How did you I'm so glad to hear that, like, especially your immediate family seems to be supportive and, trying to learn with you. Did it take a lot to, like, advocate for yourself for that, or was it pretty natural? Like, was your family around you pretty on board, or did you have to be like, hey, like, this is what I need? Like, what was the effort in the beginning process of doing that?
I definitely had to advocate for myself because with chronic pain, it's not very visible, so,
Yeah,
it is very difficult for people to understand.
yeah, for sure.
And, mental illness too, like with my
Mm-hmm.
depression,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like, unless I'm, like, crying, you can't tell I'm not okay, and, like, I should just
Yeah,
be able to do things.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it took
yeah.
time for them to really see, like, oh, these things are happening, and it's real.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and accepting that, and I think it's still a work in progress for
Mm-hmm.
me as well.
Oh yeah,
But
for sure. I understand
it's
that.
it's just, yeah, I think that those things have gotten better over the years. Like,
Nice.
it did take advocating for myself and
Mm-hmm.
also getting help from my doctors and
Nice.
having them go to doctor appointments and read things and, like, different
Right.
things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've also been really supportive and learning on their own as well,
That's awesome.
which has been really helpful and I'm grateful for.
That's awesome. That's so good. I'm so happy and so I don't know, just sending you so much like celebration for like you advocating for yourself. I'm sure it wasn't easy. Like, I feel like for that it's kind of like, yes, I already have like I've just discovered this thing for myself, and then I also have to like worry about and kind of like guide other people into like the proper ways of helping me, though I'm the sick one or the one that is dealing with something. So good for you for
Yeah.
doing it. It's not easy, but I'm so glad that like that has resulted in your family kind of like, being who they are now and kind of going on this journey with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I definitely can see that, like, all of us see like, life a lot differently from going through this together.
Okay,
So it's
amazing.
been really helpful.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit that I think the beginnings of your diagnoses were about 6 years ago. You don't have to, I know, like, you know, disability is a lifestyle. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's not like, I think we talked about this in the previous video. It's not like one thing is like your disability. It's just like the way in which your body and mind works is not is like not conducive to like the ableist structures that we currently operate in, right? But to whatever degree that you're comfortable, could you explain a little bit about like what's going on in your body and your mind these days, or like what your history of it is, however you feel?
Sure. Yeah. I deal with a lot of conditions. So I have POTS. So a lot of the time I have low blood pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and that can make me really dizzy and um, like, barely conscious. So obviously that can be very debilitating for me.
Can you
In like
explain a little bit what POTS is? Because I actually don't know what POTS is.
I'm trying to think of, like, how best to explain this.
Okay.
But um
And if you can't, that's also okay. I can do my own research and put some information in the bottom.
yeah, my brain is blanking. I do know
That's
what
totally.
it is.
Oh, of course you do. That's totally fine. Don't worry about it. That's totally
But
fine.
yeah, so I I have, like, fast heart rate and low blood pressure, and
Okay.
from movements, like from laying down to sitting up, my heart rate will go up and my blood
Okay.
pressure will drop. So, like, basically from movement and different things, I have that happen to me, and it's
Okay.
very difficult to manage because, a lot of your life is vertical.
Also, a lot of your life is movement. So when it impedes your movement in a certain way, it can be kind of weird.
Yes. So I think that has been really difficult to manage it.
Mhm.
And then with that, I have chronic migraines, so that can be very difficult because
So that's related.
unlike a headache,
Is that because of POTS, or is that like a whole different thing?
I think it can be related, but it's
Mm,
also linked to like almost everything I deal with.
fair.
So I find that headaches, I can, I can just go to bed and like it'll be better. But
Mm.
with chronic migraine, I have them sometimes for months on end, like
Oof.
24/7.
Oh.
Actually, chronic migraine for me, it never goes away. I kind of
Okay.
have gotten used to it. So in
Okay.
the way that I know, like I always have like a feeling of something is off.
Okay.
Um, but for that one, I think it's mostly my dizziness, and my most intense symptom is nausea. So
Okay.
it's really difficult to eat, and, senses are really sensitive. Like I'm really
Mhm.
sensitive to like taste and different things like that.
Mhm.
So that's another thing that really affects me.
Yeah.
And currently one of my biggest things is fatigue because
Okay.
I have MECFS,
Okay.
myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome.
Damn.
Um, so I often have crashes even just from like sitting up or walking around. I could be exhausted for
Yeah.
days or
Okay.
weeks. And so that's one of the most um
No wonder you have
new
to
things I
cancel
deal with.
plans. Come
Right, I was about to
on.
say
Fuck
that's why
that.
I
That's
cancel.
so rough. That's so rough.
Yeah, that's why I had to cancel because I got
Totally.
into a crash and I was like, okay, I
You're
need
like,
to rest.
I'm moving so slow right now. It's time for bed. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah, I just slept all day. Like my body
Fair.
could not stay awake.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, so those are the conditions I deal with that can be really difficult to, get through the daily life with,
Mhm, mhm.
as a lot of it is vertical movement,
Yeah.
being around lots of sensory
Yeah,
issues for
totally.
me. And so I feel like I'm always getting activated from something.
Getting activated and like disoriented. Your body's like, ah, what's happening?
Yeah, like, okay, how do I calm it down because everything.
Yeah, and then also it's like it's so interlinked, right? And it's kind of like how do you calm
Mhm.
like to isolate to kind of like figure out how to deal with like certain symptoms is also not that easy because like you it's kind of like they all need to be in balance and to do that is like so hard, so difficult.
Yeah, I'm like, "Let me just take okay, this is the worst right now, let me deal with that." And then sometimes if that spikes and it's not going away, then everything else follows. I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, now what
Yeah,
do I do? I have to just wait."
yeah,
So it's tough. I am learning different ways to cope and things, but, there are the days where nothing works and you just have to wait it out.
totally. I think that talking to you about this really just like makes me feel angry that like the world is so ableist in some ways and that we're expected to like do all of this on top of like whatever holding a job or like or working the same amount of hours that somebody does not do this because as you like the whole thing just to keep yourself conscious alive and kind of certain like well and or mentally like well-ish is a fucking balancing act and can be like a fucking full-time job in itself and it's like so frustrating
Oh,
to
100%, and we
yeah
don't get paid.
you don't get paid and like there's just so much internalized shame and guilt about it too, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
and
There's
yeah
so much, and I think,
yeah
like, one of the biggest things for me is, like, people are always asking me, "So, like, what are you doing now after high school?" And I'm like, "I am trying to just
stay
cope
alive.
with my health issues, like,
Yeah,
I'm just trying to cope, get through the day,
totally.
like, I don't know." That's my valid answer, that's what I
Yeah,
have for you,
totally.
because that's
Yeah.
what I'm doing, and they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, but, like, what else?" I'm like, "That's
Boo.
enough,
Yeah,
honestly,
seriously.
existing is enough."
Yeah, exactly. I think I don't I'm so lucky I live in a community or I'm around a lot of people who don't do this anymore, but for a lot of my life when you meet someone the first thing you kind of ask is like, "Oh, what do you do?" right? Like what do you do? Like, what's essentially meaning, what is your job? And like, I don't ask people that anymore. And I'm really glad that a lot of people around me like don't really care about that. Like when they kind of ask that, they just more so mean like, so what are you interested in? And I love that so much more because like, I don't know, our work, for some people, if they want to be defined by their career and their job, good for them, whatever. But like, it doesn't define all of us. And I much
Yeah.
rather know, I just want to, for me, I just want to know what you want to tell me about yourself. And if you want to tell me about your job, that's great. But like, I also, it's like, it so sucks that like, that's such a common part of culture to like, be like, especially, out of high school or even like in high school, it's kind of like, so in high school, it's like, what do you want to be? Like, blah, 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 blah. And it's all
What
just
do you want to
career.
study in college?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So career focused, right? And it's kind of like,
I talk
sometimes that's not viable.
Yeah, actually, I just had a conversation about this yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like how, people I feel like they want to ask you questions and they're asking, like, the wrong ones. Like, if
Yeah.
they wanna know about you,
Mhm.
maybe it's not the career, maybe it's something that they're passionate about. Like,
Mhm.
if you wanna know those things, you have to ask different questions, but I do get really anxious from meeting people and to even just go out and socialize because I know I'm
Okay.
gonna have to answer those things,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to learn, like, okay, what is an answer I can say? And also getting comfortable with the answer and feeling like I don't have to apologize or
Yeah.
be ashamed for my answer
Mhm.
because it's just difficult. Like, they're like, "Oh, you're in your 20s? Oh, so are you in college? No. Oh,
Mm.
so what are you doing instead? This. Oh," and it just keeps going. I'm like, "You know what? Actually, I don't feel comfortable going into that. It's really
Yeah.
difficult." And yeah, like, just stating that is a really difficult thing to do because I feel
Totally.
bad, but it's valid.
Yeah. I think yeah. I think for some people, it's not even that like they don't want to have a genuine conversation. I think
Right.
because some people are just so socialized to be like, so what do you do? And they just they can't even make that like switch in their brain. Like I think that they would be so happy to have a genuine conversation with you, but like
No.
there is no, they've like been taught to think in like in some ways such a narrow way of like, so
I
what do
mean,
you
it's like,
do?
"How are
Or
you?"
yeah, exactly.
Like,
Right?
that is just something
Yeah,
we
yeah,
say when we see someone. We're
yeah.
not necessarily asking them, like, everything, but that's what we've been taught to say.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the same everywhere, but I know, like, that's what a lot of people say, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think that that's part of, like, how society converses, and they can be really hard questions to answer, honestly, to
Totally.
just a stranger you're
Yeah,
passing by.
exactly.
Yeah.
I get that. Kind of like we share kind of like one chronic illness, and I was wondering if it's okay that we talk about it because I don't get to talk about it with that many people. But
Yes, of
we
course.
have eczema. Woo!
Yay.
Yay! But how has it been going for you right now?
Eh Well, okay, so going off all those conditions I just
Yeah.
listed, like,
Ugh,
they make me
fucking
flare up so
yeah.
much. I've been flaring up, like, for months, just, like, constantly. It's not stopping, and then
Yeah.
recently, I think
They
when
make
I
your
went through
those make your eczema flare up? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay,
like, when
okay.
I have those symptoms happen, my
Yeah.
body gets stressed and the inflammation
Yeah.
happens, and
Fuck.
it spreads.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I take care of it, but if there's still a flare up happening in my POTS, then it's still gonna be flaring up my eczema, like, even if I'm
Mm-hmm.
handling it?
Yeah.
And I think, like, right now, it's the weather, like, the
Yeah.
dryness in the
Uh-huh.
winter,
Uh-huh.
like, that affects eczema I mean, dry skin in general, but
Totally.
our skin gets really dry, and it can
Mm-hmm.
become really painful.
Oh yeah.
And so right now, actually, today, I was like, "Oh, it's doing a little better, I'm glad," and then I woke up and I was like, my face, like, I had a flare up around my
Ugh.
mouth and on my neck, and I was like, "I can't even feel it yet," but just seeing it makes me feel like, "Oh, not
Yeah.
again," like, I just had this calm down.
Yep. It's such a never-ending battle. Also, do you find that I find for me, I don't know when I started realizing this, but like the pain from it or just kind of like the anguish or like it's almost like also when you have eczema, like especially when you have a flare up, it's sometimes not even pain, but it's like it's almost like a constant stimulation of sorts. and like not in a good way. Like it's like a negative feeling that you're constantly feeling, and that's very exhausting.
I get really restless. I don't know
Yeah,
what. It
yeah, yeah,
feels
yeah,
just
yeah.
like like it's not even
True.
inflammation, like burning.
Yeah,
It's just you can tell something is
yeah, yeah,
off,
yeah.
and you just yeah, it's tiring. Like I will just fall asleep because my body is
Yeah,
exhausted.
for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. When it was, I had a, as of kind of like May this year, I've gotten a bit better. But before that, I had like about a year and a half long flare up because I had moved and a
Oh
bunch of
god.
stuff. And it was bad. It hadn't been that bad in a while. And I'm sure you know, every time you have a flare up, they're not always the same. So as
No.
I've said in like other episodes, the learning curve is fucking steep. Like it's different every time, and like you're just trying
Yes.
to manage, but like you don't know how to do it. Your doctors
It's
don't know
like
how to do it. Like
it might not be the same things
no,
at work.
definitely
It
not.
might not last the
Completely.
same amount. No, and
Yeah.
I think like my eczema, the color of it changes sometimes,
Mhm.
the
Yep.
texture, where it is, and even just like how
It shows up.
painful it
Yep.
is.
Uh-huh. All of
Yeah,
that.
like it's all so different. And I
Yeah.
think like for me, I didn't even realize that for a while because it only came back for me recently, actually in the
Mhm.
past few years.
Mhm.
And it's just changing so much, and like I'm learning what you just said like
Yep.
now.
Ugh, yeah, my heart goes out to you. It can be so stressful because yeah, like you said, when it was really bad, I'm only starting to kind of have a normal sleeping pattern again, even though like I kind of my skin quote unquote cleared up in May, my sleeping pattern was still so fucked from that year of like I woke up pretty much like every 2 to 4 hours. Like when it was really bad, woke up like scratching in pain. Like everything felt dirty. Like, yeah, I'm also just because like you're
The
so,
flaking
yeah, the
skin.
all of the flaking skin. And so like everything is dirty. But then also like, so your skin is making stuff dirty, but then you need to clean stuff more, but you have no energy. But like if you don't, then it's going to make it worse. And it's just, ugh.
And then when you wash, like when you shower, it's painful, but then also it dries it out. And then it
Yeah.
gets worse. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I still have like anxiety. Like I have residual anxiety from showering. Like now it's kind of okay, but there was a long while where like it is helpful to shower for sure and I should do it, but for about 20-30 minutes afterwards, my skin will be so itchy and burny and like it'll just be so uncomfortable, but obviously I have to do it because if I don't do it, it will also be terrible just in a different way, right? It is better to shower, but like
It's so
sometimes,
hard.
yeah, sometimes I feel so hesitant to do it, and still now, even though like I'm quote unquote like a bit better, like I just have,
It stays with you. The memories
yeah,
stay with you. Your
totally,
body remembers. Your
yeah,
body remembers,
exactly,
and like I have so many issues with showering myself. Like I'm going through what you're saying like
yeah,
now again.
ugh,
And also
yeah,
I with the chronic fatigue part and
oh my
okay, so
gosh,
mostly with POTS,
yeah,
I have issues with temperature changes. So if I
okay,
need to take like a warm shower, I might feel like I'm going to pass out and
whoa,
like need to like rest for like hours after. So
okay,
it's like if I need to shower, I have to make time for the shower, but also the resting before the shower and after the shower. So it takes up a
mhm,
significant amount of
mhm,
time.
totally.
And like getting myself to do it when I'm fatigued is like not always going to happen. Like I can't take daily showers
Yeah,
anymore, even
fair.
though I feel like I need to.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's like, it's just not going to happen. And
Yeah.
then there's the whole depression piece too, where you just like
Ugh.
don't feel like you can do it.
Yeah. And also, I have to say, the upkeep, at least for me, especially when your skin is bad, like just like the amount and of how thorough I need to be after the shower of like putting cream on and stuff, it is intense. It is labor intensive. It's tiring to do it.
I get so angry that I have to do that after everything else. I'm like, okay, I also have to take care of it,
Yeah.
put medication because that's also like if I skip that, it's gonna get worse. And I do skip
Mhm.
it all the time.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's work. And
Yeah.
I also have to like tell myself, okay, if you're not going to do it, you need to ask for help. And I
Yeah.
struggle with that too. And also
Oh,
I
I
get
didn't even think
annoyed when
about
people are
that.
helping me.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, no, sometimes like a lot of the time I need to ask my family to help me because I just will not do it. I'm like,
Right.
okay, I will
Oh.
just sit here and I will like ask you like, can you reach this spot
Yeah.
and like help me? And I get so annoyed because I don't like the feeling, like I have it on my scalp, so I hate the feeling of like
Mhm.
it being all greasy. So I'll skip it
Totally.
for a while because I'm like, I just showered. I don't want greasy
Totally.
hair right after I just
Yeah, for
showered.
sure. Also, it's so
So,
vulnerable, right? Like it's kind of
oh my gosh.
uh like it's very vulnerable just feeling like that. I don't know. I will not speak for you, but like I don't know, sometimes it doesn't make me like physically feel super attractive and all of that stuff. And I don't like want people touching me or like
Oh,
being in my
yes.
space, and like and yeah, it's what
I also feel like the flaking. I just don't want to flake around everyone. Like I
yeah.
just like I feel gross and
I used to get
like
really
not good
claustrophobic.
about
Yeah,
myself.
I know.
I
I
think
know.
your self-esteem changes so much and I didn't know that would happen.
Yep.
Um
It
and
definitely does.
also the other thing is like it can be so painful that I
Yeah.
cannot
Yep.
move. Like
Yep.
I did not realize, I won't be able to move
Yeah.
or like if it's around my mouth, like I don't know how I'm going to eat without it like cracking. Like
Yep.
it's difficult in
Only
ways that I didn't
only
know.
tip I would say though, if I don't know if this would be in line with like the other things that you have, and totally disregard if it's not. Like
Right.
so when I was flaring up really badly, I pretty much like couldn't move my neck, and I had
Yeah,
to
my neck is a place too.
make a conscious effort of like just doing it a little bit, even like it, yeah, just kind of like,
Moving the head.
yeah. Your viewers can't see it right now, but we're
I'm
doing a little
realizing they can't
collective,
see
we're
it.
doing a little collective stretch because, yeah, eczema also makes the skin quite tough. And I don't know if this
Yeah.
is why I have like chronic pain. I have a lot of fucking trauma from fucking doctors that
Oh,
I'm on a long kind of, because I can. I know a lot of people can't. I'm on a little bit of a doctor hiatus. I do not want to talk to people that essentially say that nothing is happening, no big deal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm
But
there too.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's so much like
yeah,
you can feel like your body is affected by that
yeah,
and how mentally it affects us. It affects us physically too.
yeah, for sure. So, but I feel like, so do you, I was thinking about this before our conversation. I don't know if I've ever had a doctor that has ever made me feel seen or trusted. Given though that most of my experience, so I've had eczema pretty severely since I was like 3. So like I've had to be in and out of doctor's office like very very much like as a child. So given I
Oh,
was
wow.
not really able to advocate for myself a lot, nor did
Yeah.
I. So like I don't have any memory of having like a good, not necessarily bad, but a really good relationship or like a trusting relationship with a doctor, especially not for eczema. I've never really like, yeah, I don't, yeah. But do you like, what is your experience? I know there's definitely going to be some bad ones. Are there any good ones? Like, what's
I
your
don't feel like
experience?
I've had any experience that stands out to me as good.
Okay,
But I also have seen so many doctors in the past years, I can't remember.
fair.
I do kind of know like that some like of my doctors were when they validated me, like I felt so seen, like to the point where I would get emotional. Like that should not be happening. It shouldn't be so rare. That's
Hmm.
like I'm gonna cry if you tell me it's real, or like you're listening to me.
Yeah.
Like
Woof.
that should be a given. And I see that
Yeah.
in so much in the community like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I've had a few people that have stood out to me in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just difficult to trust it, I think, because of how some people are like that. And then they're suddenly like, oh, you're not going to be better? Okay, like I no longer am interested in you.
Does
You're
that
like,
happen? Like,
just a
wait. You mean
yeah,
like, wait, in like for friends or for doctors?
doctors. Like, I will,
No.
yeah,
Really?
I can tell the difference in how they speak to me. When they first meet me, it's like, "Oh, we're gonna try this, we're gonna try that,"
Oh,
and then,
no
like, after a
fucking
while,
way.
they're like, "Oh, like, I don't know what to do." Like, I had a doctor tell me, like, "I don't know why you're here." I'm like,
Fuck.
"Mm." I'm here because I'm in pain. I'm at
Yeah.
the chronic pain clinic because I
Yeah.
have chronic pain. They're like, yeah, but we can't do anything about it for you. I'm like, okay, and you're
Yeah.
gonna get paid for this, so
Yeah, for
great.
sure. I definitely have felt I felt that before. Like I remember I went to like some fucking specialist when I don't know how old I was, but a kid, and they pretty much gave me some kind of steroid, like oral steroid and sleeping pills. It what happened, and this happened a lot when I was a kid. It would, especially like with Western medicine, it would clear up very quickly for about 2 weeks, and then it would come back stronger. And
Oh
so yeah,
no.
I've definitely it's slowly kind of like spread on my body, like as I was a child. It started out with just like my eyes, and then like kind of like on the inner parts of like my arms, and it's like, but yeah. And after getting these steroids and these like freaking sleeping pills, and it not working, I just, maybe I'm remembering wrong, I don't really know, because like obviously I was a kid, but I just remember like not having any more treatments from those people. It was just kind of like, okay, well, I don't know. Like,
Because it's like getting worse and we can't do anything about it.
yeah,
Like what we gave you isn't working, so bye.
yeah, dermatologists are trash. Fuck,
Ugh, I
fuck
can't find.
dermatologists.
I need to find a new one, and I just don't want to go through it
I
again.
know, I know.
But like, I think one of the most like hard things is like when they don't believe my skin is that bad. They're like, "Oh, you look fine
Oh,
though." I'm
for
like,
fuck's
"Well, it
sake.
doesn't feel good. Like,
Yeah,
it could be under the skin, like happening soon. Like, can you take care
totally,
of it before it
totally.
flares up?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or also just like, I don't know, like, "Oh, I have patients that are worse. You're not in this serious of
Fuck
a situation." And I'm like,
you.
"Well, okay, can you not like, can you
That's,
prevent it
yeah,
before I get to that
yeah.
situation?" Like, with any symptoms or condition,
Mm-hmm,
honestly, they're like
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
this.
Also, I
So
have to say, sometimes eczema looks really bad and I feel kind of okay. And there are definitely times where I've looked okay, but and like people have like not even noticed or like whatever, but I've felt really, really bad. So like just the
oh,
fact that you're fucking
yeah.
looking at it is not a good enough indication for anything.
And I think that that's just the case in so many times. Like,
Totally.
a lot of the time, I look like I'm struggling a lot and I can't even tell. And then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's so bad, like, and there's no sign of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Physically, you can't tell at all. And everyone's like, oh, like, I can't notice it on you. It doesn't look that
Yeah.
bad. I'm like, no, I can't see it either.
Yeah.
But
But I feel
I
like trash and that's
feel it
valid.
and it feels, yeah.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
it's scary too because it's like, there's no sign of it, why do I feel like this? And to be told that, it's
Mm,
like, messes with my head.
totally. I'm sorry. It's not fun. I am, yeah, and like especially with eczema, it's, I feel like a lot of people don't really understand it and they're like, "Oh, it's not that serious. It's just like a skin thing." Like I don't know where that kind of conception came from, because like it's actually really fucked. Having it is very
I
fucked.
actually had no idea how bad it could be,
Yeah.
until learning more about the community and going through this.
Yeah.
So I did know that it was a condition, but people say like, "Oh, I had eczema as a kid." I'm just like,
Yeah.
"Okay." That's like a very common thing to say.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
"Okay, well, that's not the same thing." I did have eczema
No.
as a kid, but then it went away,
Mhm.
and now it's very, very different. Um,
Totally.
and like I think it's difficult because I don't know where that came from either. Like, I
Yeah,
know
right?
psoriasis also like, people are like, "Oh, it's not psoriasis." I'm like, "Yeah, but they're like cousins is what I've
Totally. But
heard."
also psoriasis is
And
also like can be super serious. Like I don't understand for some reason why
yes,
for dermatology people
people
always
also
have,
dismiss that.
yeah,
I don't
it's
know why
really
they
weird.
dismiss skin conditions. I think it's more because they're like, "Oh, it's probably just how it looks. It's not gonna feel." It's like,
No,
it can feel like really painful,
totally.
even if it doesn't look like
Mhm.
that too.
And like as we were
Yeah.
talking about it, for me it also really like fucked with my confidence, right? Because
Oh
it
yeah.
comes in waves, it's kind of like, okay, I look a certain way and then I'll look completely different when I'm going through a flare up, and that's like, it makes me super anxious. Or like sometimes when I used to like get complimented when I didn't have a flare up, I would be like, in the back of my mind I was like, you don't know what I look like when I have a flare up. Like just like being so afraid of like this like other side of me kind of like.
Yeah.
idea.
I mean, feeling like when you feel like your skin, you can't like recognize the touch of it and
Yeah,
you don't recognize how you look. That does something to your
totally.
self-esteem.
Yeah, right? Yeah, so kind of wrapping up our little time together. It's been really fun chatting. I'm really enjoying this, by the way.
Me too. Definitely like talking about it with someone that understands what it can be like is really helpful and you making me feel so seen.
Yeah, thanks. Well, oh no, like doing this podcast is very much a selfish endeavor. Like I realize a lot about like the disabled community until very recently, and then I just kind of looked around and I was like, I need more. I need like people to talk about this, and so doing this podcast is my selfish endeavor to like make friends and chat with
I'm
me.
Oh, I'm glad we connected.
Yeah. One of the yeah. So I wanted to end off the conversation with asking you when you feel most seen, or alternatively, how do you want to be seen? However you feel like answering that.
I feel like for me, it's just kind of like a simple thing that can be very difficult, which is just like, you know, accepting what I represent myself as, my situation, just kind of knowing that I know best and that as a chronically ill person, I can still do what I'm doing. And,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm choosing not to do something, then that's the choice I want to make. And like, I think when I feel most seen is when people just believe that and accept it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's great, and I support you. And just recognizing the fact that I exist as a chronically ill disabled people person and
Mm-hmm.
not in the way that like it's a negative thing or they have to treat me like I'm not the friend I was before or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. Like it makes a big difference to just be recognized, included,
Yeah.
um, supported. I
Mm-hmm.
think those are like the simple things. And one big thing that has been really helpful is people like learning with me and choosing to ask how they can help me or be aware of my situation, what can be helpful for communication,
Yeah.
different things like that. I think it makes me feel seen because I'm like, oh, they are validating my needs, they are helping me make it more possible for me to do these things, they're connecting with me in a way that works for me.
Mm-hmm.
And also understanding that like it can go both ways. Like, I can do the same for them. I think one of the biggest things is when people see me, they're like, "Oh, my problems aren't as big as yours though." And I'm like, "Okay, well that's
Yeah.
invalidating your situation,
Yeah. It's
So
not a
like both
competition.
we can both, we can both figure this out." And I think
Totally.
that makes like a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's like in the friends and family department, I would say, and like with um like with doctors and with school, like I found that being listened to as the person that is living with the condition
Yeah.
and recognizing that they know best, even if I've learned and from classes and read in books and whatever, like
Yeah.
this person lives the experience
Yeah.
and listening to what I am experiencing and voicing it. And with like school, I got like accommodations because I needed assistance with
Totally.
different things. So I think that those types of help really made me feel seen in the way that like, oh, they're acknowledging this is there because
Mm-hmm.
they're giving me these options and they're recognizing these needs are valid. And
Mm-hmm.
so like by helping me and by you know not dismissing the fact or ignoring, you know, that I am struggling with these things, I feel seen just existing, I
Yeah.
guess. It's like not
Yeah.
it's like a very complicated idea because I feel like we're not taught to see people that way. But that's when I feel the most comfortable.
Totally. I think that it's actually so beneficial for everyone because actually there is I think we're especially in the people that are talking about like disability advocacy in these days, it's like there is no hard and fast line. Yes, there is the kind of like government mandated criteria of disability, but that's just for like their need to define what is appropriate for their labor practices, which is just
Right.
all about making money in capitalism. It's
Right.
not considerate of like who we are kind of like as people, kind
Yeah,
of
and people
like
might
at
not
all.
necessarily go for that are disabled, but that doesn't mean they're not.
Yeah, totally.
Because I think people always assume that they're disabled if they need these things. And
Yeah.
that may be true, but
Mhm.
it's not the only reason someone is
Mhm.
disabled.
Totally. And I think that when I was having this conversation, and I feel like I'm gonna continue asking this question and seeing what other people think, because there needs to be, as I said in the last episode, there needs to be something between, oh yeah, I see you as a quote unquote normal person, and pity. Like why are those the two options? I don't
Also,
understand. Like
what is normal? Like,
that's
are
total
you
like
telling me
yeah,
you
exactly.
see me as like a person who can do all those things? Because that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, that's not true.
And if you're pitying me, you're saying that, oh, because you can't do any of those things, that's a
Yeah.
bad thing. So like, what is in between that, and how can we get there? And I think
Yeah.
like people need to there needs to be so much more schooling about this, because
Mhm.
people are not being educated, which is why we don't know. Like, I was not taught the proper way to talk
Mhm.
about these things,
Yeah.
or it I mean, to this day people still use the term special education in the class they're teaching about this disability. It's like that in
Yeah.
itself, like, okay, we're
Mhm.
still there, you
Yeah,
know.
for sure, for sure. And I feel like when I think that there's more understanding for it, then people actually are able to, if everybody just kind of like understood disability discourse more, like I don't know how it's going to evolve, but it's just kind of like I think that
Right.
it would just help everybody, whether they identify as able-bodied or disabled, to be more intuitive and trust themselves a little bit more, and like give themselves a little more breathing room in terms of kind of
Yeah.
like advocating for themselves, et cetera, right? Like it can only do good for the way in which we like love ourselves and love each other.
Yeah, and I think like it's not the disabled versus the non-disabled. Like,
No,
we need to do it together. Like, if we are
totally.
against each other, we're not going to get there. So
No,
I
of
think that's the
course.
biggest thing. Like, people think like, oh, we'll stick to our issues and you stick to yours. It's like, that's not how we're going to get to
Not at
understanding each
all.
other.
Totally. Not at all. Yeah, dude. Ugh, what a good sentiment to end on. Unity, cooperation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where we're gonna end the pod. That's all I got. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Yay, cool.
Another episode in the can. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at In Our Bodies to keep updated. Any of the resources that we talked about, or Instagram accounts, etc., as always, is going to be in the show notes. Okay, catch you on the next episode.